Testing. Hello, 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 hello. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the HR Leadership Summit. Give yourself a hand of applause. Phenomenal. I want to start off by thanking everybody for being here. It is incredible to be back at the Trust, to be back to see a venue packed out. I was speaking to someone the other day saying that we have this event coming up, and they said, Frano, you're crazy. It's going to be the 5th of December. And we had 550 registrations to this night, and we have a packed audience filling the seats. So thank you so much on a Tuesday evening coming out. This just again is a testament of the phenomenal following that we've got, the incredible community that you are, and I want you again to give yourself a round of applause for being here. Thank you so much. Tonight is an incredibly special evening for us here at Wamly. I am going to share with you a bit about what this evening is about, what we're going to be. So from an agenda perspective, we will have a keynote from Mark Sham. Mark will need no introduction, but I'll call him up in a second. And then secondly, after that, we're going to have an interactive session with me here on the couch with esteemed guests sitting here in the front. Thank you so much for being here. Clients of ours sharing with you their use cases, lessons learned, challenges faced, how they overcome them, and then the learnings from these projects that they embarked on. So you're in for a night filled with insights. I want to encourage, like we always do, that you interact, that you ask questions. There will be various Q&As throughout the evening. I really want to encourage us to learn. And that is really what we're about. Apart from being Wamly video interview software, these initiatives and these events here at the Trust is giving back to the HR community. Who has been here more than once? Twice? I'm singing a song now. What's that? 3 times a lady? Yeah, and let me not go there. 4 times? Oh, well, thank you, wife. And who else? You would know, and you would often hear me say this, that I absolutely, fundamentally believe that in South Africa as HR, we do not connect enough. Yes, we have wonderful other conferences where we have thousands of attendees, but really getting together, sharing and learning in an intimate space is what tonight and these events are all about. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Francois de Wet. I'm the founder and the CEO at Wamly. Must I put this on? There we go. I clicked too fast. We are South Africa's largest provider of one-way video interview software. We are HR tech in the hiring space. And I'm so proud to say that in 2023, we helped almost 400 clients interview 40 candidates across 3,400 vacancies in 26 countries. Thank you. And 89% of those candidates absolutely loved the journey. And this evening, I want to thank my team. I want to thank our clients. You might recognize some of these logos. Some of these logos might belong to you. If I missed the logo of a client in the audience, please come to me afterwards and say, Fran, you missed us. I apologize. But it's just been such an incredible blessing. And at the end of the evening, I'll share some insights into what we're up to in 2024 and where we're planning on going. But let's get into our first guest speaker, Mark Sham. Mark needs absolutely no introduction. However, Mark, while you're doing an Instagram story, I want you to see me say this, and please join me up on stage. Mark has been such an incredible friend and a colleague and a peer and just a follower of Wamly. Ago, Mark said, Fran, why don't we try events? And here we are at the 5th event. And I just want to thank you, brother. Thank you so much. So, thank you. Enjoy.
Hello, guys. No, you can definitely do better. Hello, guys. 28 minutes past. Good, so I know. So just settle down as I get through this 4.5-hour keynote. Everything will be fine. No, seriously, I just want to, first of all, say thank you to each and every one of you for being here. It's not lost on me that you're here on the 5th of December. Did you just not have anything better to do, or like, no, but seriously, it's been a long year. And I think that so many people are tired because this is probably the first year that we've had in 4 or 5 years where we've had like an uninterrupted space to have a crack. And so it's been like everybody on the COVID patch. And so I know for sure everybody's tired. And then on top of that, you've worked a long day, you have families, and then you still chose to be here. So please give yourselves a round of applause. It is a big deal. I do want to give a shout out to Wamly. I don't have to do this, but I want to. Fran almost tried to steal my thunder there for a second, but it's cool, Fran, because we go way back. It was indeed about 18 months ago that I said to Fran, I think you're onto something here with Wamly. There's no question about it. But if you knew what I knew, you'd be doing some things differently. And I was trying to get him to understand this nature of why events are so important, especially when you use them correctly. And I have to say that Wamly have been overwhelmingly consistent ever since. It's really a testament to them. And the key aspect here is that for the last 18 months that they've been running these events, they have sought every occasion to value rather than have a quick smash and grab. And I think they deserve a special round of applause for actually getting it. And then I'd really just like to give myself a shout out for wearing long pants in 30-degree heat. I was thinking about wearing shorts, but sheesh, apparently I like to do difficult things. I want to talk to you about this very broad topic of leadership. It's actually quite interesting when Fran and them came to me a few weeks ago and said, would you speak on this topic? It's probably the topic that I cringe for the most, right? Because like everybody's got to talk on leadership. And the key aspect here is that, as I've come to learn in my own life, that leadership is much more about what you do and less about what you say. And so what happens with these leadership talks is that someone gets on stage and says, let me just tell you how it is from a leadership perspective. And then they run through you should do this, and this is what perfect looks like. And Mike Tyson, of all people, I can't believe I'm going to quote, but he came up with a beautiful saying, which is that everybody's got punched in the face. And I think it's very true, right? Because it's easy to be like what we should be doing, and then like the real world exists. So what I want to do is I want to just share some points of view with you. I opted purposefully to actually have no slides, because I actually just want to talk to you as people, if I may. And I want to share just some stories from my own life that I've learned. But I just want to be clear, this is not about me. I'm just using parts of my experiences as a proxy because I know my experiences best. I'm actually trying to get to a point. I just want to use some things that I learned along the way to get to that point, if I may. Probably one of the greatest lessons I had to learn around leadership was in the last few years. Like so many of you, when COVID hit, I really naively thought that that people were overreacting. People did overreact, but it's a story for another time. But then I thought this thing was going to blow over quite quickly. And here we are. We're heading into 4 years later. You realize how crazy that is, right? March. By March, we will be into year 4, or 4 years completed. And just a bit of background, the building that you're sitting in today, the Tryst, wasn't some beautiful idea that I had for the longest time. It was an absolute necessity COVID response because I was getting the absolute shit kicked out of me and I had no clue what to do. And it brings an interesting point, which is like, I thought I understood leadership fairly well until COVID hit. And it turns out that when COVID hit, I came back to South Africa for what I thought would be 7 weeks, longest 7 weeks of my entire existence. And everything from March 2020 was just trying to figure out what the next step would look like without having any clue what the next year. And it turns out that human beings hate that. We absolutely hate not knowing what the future looks like. It feels very dangerous to us. So you'll see across the board, in personal and professional circles, human beings as a whole are always looking for certainty. And the irony here, before and post-COVID, is that in a world that is changing exponentially because of technology, the only thing we ever guaranteed is change. In a world that all we're looking for is certainty. So it creates quite a conundrum for us as human beings. We're longing this and we get that. Hindsight, as they say, is 2020. And if I look back over the last 4 years, I can tell you 2 things that are absolutely opposing but equally true. The last 4 years were the hardest 4 years of my adult life by a country mile. the last 4 years were the best thing that ever happened to me. I don't say that lightly though, because it feels a lot like I've been set a light on fire and I've got a smile on my face. You know what they say about entrepreneurship? It's like staring into the deep, dark abyss while chewing glass with a smile on your face, telling people how much you love the journey. But it came with some very valuable leadership lessons, and I just want to share a few with you. And I think the key here is that nothing I say to you right this second is going to be new information. But the key thing about human beings is that sometimes we forget, and all we need sometimes is just a little reminder. And I've got like 25 minutes left with you. And I'm hoping that just one little thing lands. Because when keynote speakers come on stage and do their thing, take them through like a 12-point process, and you better get the entire methodology, and if you don't, it was all a waste. In fact, all you actually need is one simple idea to land above all the others, and if that one resonates with you compared to someone else's idea, just focus on that and don't think about anything else. I want to talk to you about change, pain, and self. I'm starting to see more and more that leadership is a cliche. You know, the way we think of leadership is actually quite broken. And the older I get, the more I realize that leadership really isn't about being connected to rank or title. In a sense, anybody can be a leader. And so we tend to confuse the two because someone has a higher position, they're a so-called leader. But we all know in the real world that that's absolutely not true. At any point in time in your life, you've probably worked for someone above you and you've thought, what a dipshit. And you were probably right. And the only thing that made was that they were above you, and so society in general gave them this so-called power to kind of make decisions ahead of you. But we all know how those people don't actually necessarily control everything. And I see that more and more. And the difficult thing exactly about leadership is that you can't tell other people how to be better leaders. You have to show them. And so one of the hardest things about becoming a leader, if that is your aim, how do I lead my organization more effectively, is that you have to become the very thing you're trying to teach, which is probably the hardest thing. And you have to do it in this way where simultaneously you're okay with making many mistakes and then correcting them and learning from them and not looking too perfect, but still coming across as if you know what you're doing. Because you need people to believe you. And you can't really push people into a direction. They have to be willing to follow you. So I firmly believe that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Simon Sinek has spoken about this endlessly, so I'm not getting into it. And I'm not just talking about but there is something that's quite important about knowing why the hell you do what you do. And it's startling to me how few people actually know why they do what they do. And by the way, getting a paycheck isn't the answer, right? It's the byproduct of what you do, and of course we need it. But this key thing, it's a lot like parents. Like how many of you have kids here? How many of you ever taught your kids how to have a very specific accent? You know what that process is like, right? You're trying to tell them, no, don't speak like that, speak like this. But kids are mimicking machines. You can't, in a way, teach your kids how to speak a specific way. They just pick up their accent from the world around them. And I'm starting to see quite simply that leadership is a lot like that. So just before COVID, I started talking on this topic of happiness in the workplace. And people often give me that glazed look when I tell them that I speak about happiness. Because oftentimes they think what I'm referring to is the feeling, which I often argue is fleeting. So when someone calls me a motivational speaker, I literally want to shoot them in the genitals. I'm not here to motivate anyone. I think that motivation is like the dumbest idea ever. Because what it is let's just say I managed to be the best motivational speaker today. The problem is that your problems still exist on Monday. It's a lot like a sugar rush, right? So I can walk in here and go we can do this, guys, and it's been a hard year, but let me tell you what's going to happen in 2024. And I can get you hella hyped up, and then you go and you might have 2 drinks tonight, and I promise you tomorrow you're going to wake up feeling very unmotivated. So I've been speaking about the topic of happiness in the form of, I think of happiness as learning to acquire the mental tools and the emotional infrastructure to deal with complexity. I want you to understand, if you don't already, that we are currently living in an environment and a society that has never been more complex than it is today. And no one actually prepared us for this complexity. to learn all these incredible things, math, English, science, computer literacy. We do this cute little thing once on a Friday for half an hour called life orientation, and we're like, off you go, buggers, hope you got it. But don't you find it funny, like no one teaches you how to be happy? Which is quite funny, right? Because like, if I were to ask all of you here, like, do you want to be happy? Unless you're a total sadomasochist, you would all say you want to be happy. And is it fair to say that we all want to get to our deathbeds at whatever age, look back and say, that was a good, happy, successful, fulfilled life? So then don't you find it funny, like, why isn't happiness not a subject from the 1st to the 12th grade the way math is? I'm not saying math isn't important, I just think that like happiness is equally important. But it actually goes a little bit further. All these things that we really need to thrive in the future aren't taught to us. But thank God for Pythagoras, because that helped me during COVID, let me tell you. Got me through my darkest days. And so one of the interesting things that I'm learning about leadership is that we're always so focused on how to be a good leader to get other people to do certain things. Put it back to front. I think you can only ever be a good leader when you actually focus on how you are. It's the inside-out mentality. And it's another one of the things that people don't teach you. You don't go to school and get taught how to have a relationship with others to begin with. It's quite crazy how we all wired differently. And in a country like ours, it's a good example of if left with enough time, people will start to see different as bad, rather than just different. And we don't actually understand fully how people are different and why. And we haven't learned how to deal with each other, but largely because how can we even begin to have a relationship with others when we don't even have a relationship with ourselves? And so the interesting thing is that we're trying to get people to move at scale, but we don't even understand why we do what we do. We don't even understand why our behaviors are our behaviors. And we don't even like to have those chats because like, there aren't that many spaces where you can have a real raw discussion around relationship with self. I'll give you a simple example. You know what I wish they told me when I was a kid? Said, you're not going crazy, boy. We've all got that annoying voice in our heads that comments about everything incessantly all the time. I call that voice the roommate. And I label it as such because if you've ever lived in a house share with other people, you realize that you don't have to take everything your roommate says is true or real. And so because we don't even acknowledge that voice in our heads, we don't get taught as young kids how to decipher when to listen and when not. Because sometimes your roommate will offer you very solid advice and you will ignore it at your peril. How many of you, for argument's sake, even in the HR space, have met someone and you're like, your roommate is like, something is off here, do not proceed. And you're like, yeah, fuck it, I'm just doing it anyway. But then how many times does your roommate lie to you and you believe it? I wonder, there's a lot of women here in the crowd, like how many of you looked at yourself in the mirror this morning and your roommate was, you're ugly. And that is terrible advice. You should not listen to it, but you do so at your peril. So because we don't even acknowledge this roommate, we don't even get taught when to decipher, when to listen and when not, and it shows. Now, why am I talking about that? Because what happened to us during COVID was out of nowhere, and this is just my own sub-story, being a person who runs events, who speaks for a living, who does all these things that require people to gather together in person, I woke up one morning, it all got taken away, and we had no assurity of when it would come back. And I kept thinking, it'll come back, it'll come back, it'll come back. So then Cyril called a family meeting. He was like, you've got 3 weeks to drink, go nuts. And I did. I took him up on that advice. Turns out that was a terrible piece of advice that I listened to. And then he said, you can have another 2 weeks. And it kind of ended June last year when we took away the masks. Remember that? And so I remember very clearly going like, oh my God, I'm in real trouble. Like I've got no backup. And one of the first things I did was I just got hold of 2 broadcast cameras, old school. And I set them up and one of my early clients called me and said, I've been watching what you've been doing with these webinars. Could you do it for us? And I was like, but this is not even my business. This is not what I do, but like I need to eat. And so before I knew it, the trust was born. And the thing is that in life, we're constantly looking for the paint by number system. What do I do now? We're always waiting for someone to tell you like, go from grade 1 to grade 2. Then when you land at grade 2, you do these things, right? Then you pass this test, then you go to grade. We often wonder why 18-year-olds are so confused. For 18 years of their life, we tell them what to do, and then you're like, what next? And you're like, it's up to you. And they're like, what? But where's the manual? And so for like 3 years, we then like had a little office in WeWork, and then I started looking around for a space, which I was hoping to be like the size of this room, and then I landed 1,500 square meters. So my math was terrible. And before I knew it, we were in the space, and just as we got going, they locked us down in June 2021 again. Do you remember that? Like level 4, you can't even go to the restaurant, sorry for you. And it was quite an interesting time with government. They were kind of like, sorry, you can't do what you do for a living, but we can't help you. Off you go. It was just, your hands are tied behind your back, good luck. And what was so interesting is I kept finding myself being in a victim state. Like, I'm not allowed to do this, I'm not allowed to do that, and what do I do now? And I'm a seasoned entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. And even I find myself looking for the paint by numbers system. What next? And it brought up such an interesting point that as you go through your leadership journey, the more comfortable you can become with the unknown, and the more comfortable you can become with figuring it out along the way. This doesn't mean you don't plan, you don't prep, but there's actually a biological reason that we differ from that. Is because one of the other things I talk about in the happiness talk is that we are fundamentally wired to do God. And what comes with that is that oftentimes what we do is we'll do anything to avoid pain. And we don't speak about this enough because it's a little bit like morbid, right? But it's true. This is the problem that we're doing is human beings are wired in such a way that we'll do anything to avoid pain, which is impossible. And then we do the classic thing, we do anything to numb it. By the way, throwing yourself into your work for 18 hours a day is a form of numbing. Scrolling endlessly on Instagram is a form of numbing. We tend to think of numbing as like sex, drugs, rock and roll. But there's like multiple formats of numbing that you can do. One of the hardest lessons I had to learn in the last few years is simply this paradox. It's the key thing I just want to leave you with. Your brain is designed to keep you safe, not make you happy. I'm going to say it again because I think it's worth repeating. Your brain is designed to keep you safe, not make you happy. And why this is so important is that in the form of safety that your brain is looking for, the unknown is dangerous. We evolved in environments that look terrible from 50,000 years ago or more. We've just been dropped into this environment that now is moving exponentially. And so in the old days, the unknown meant certain death. But I just want to check, how many of you have recently wrestled a tiger or like an alligator on your front stoop, right? Unknown has changed. The unknown is no longer dangerous because our environments are far safer, but what happens is that the unknown is dangerous, and we steer from it. And I had to learn this valuable lesson, that pain is actually a precursor for growth. Now, we speak about this all the time, so it's not like I'm telling you anything new, but I just want to break it down a bit further. Pain is what helps you understand something emotionally, where previously you only understood it intellectually. A great example of this is if I brought a hot stove on the stage and I put my hand on it in front of all of you, you're not dumb. You could see that it is burning, right? You would hear it even sizzle. You would hear my skin. You would see my hand burning on this hot stove. But here's the thing. It's when you're standing on the stage, and it's when your hand is on that hot stove, and it's when you are feeling that pain viscerally through every single fiber of your nervous system. It's when you feel that you know not to put your hand on this hot stove again. So oftentimes we're watching other people do something, and that's understanding something intellectually. But when you feel it with your own hand, understand it emotionally. And as I've come to learn, if you really want to master anything, you need a catalyst between understanding something intellectually and emotionally and bringing it together. So the irony is that pain is actually what helps us understand the world in a way that we won't make those mistakes again, but we'll do anything to avoid pain. Which is ironic because it's impossible. And then so you find this loop. Just a screensaver. You might just want to go back to my slide there. That whole one slide. So here's what I'm getting at. In the last few years, I only learned a simple lesson. I learned around leadership that you can't tell people what you do, you have to show them, which means you have to become a specific type of person that can do the very things that you talk about, but you're going to make lots of mistakes, and you have to be willing to show people that side. The only thing with mistakes you never want to do is you never want to keep repeating over and over and over and over, because then you're not learning the lesson. But the problem is that we don't really engineer space for mistakes in the workplace, and this is where I really want to encourage you, not only for yourself. Because what we do is from young, we tell kids that mistakes are good. and then we slap them on the wrist the second they get something wrong on a test. We tell people, that's when people tell me we rewrote our values and we've got those mission boards, those mission statements at the front of our like our offices. Most of the times I want to vomit on those statements, if I'm honest. Because all you have to go do is just do a quick audit and say, you said all these things on your front desk. Let's just go see, like a base. And the best way to actually find it is, especially if you're a man, just be having a wee at the urinal and ask someone a question. How's it going with this? And they're like, people say this, but they do that. Men are very honest when they have their genitals in their hands, I must tell you. It's quite funny. I'm just checking if you're awake, just checking. So what we do is we keep telling people in the workplace that mistakes are good. You must make mistakes because that's how you learn. And the second that someone makes a mistake in the workplace, they're like, I took initiative. I try to make this happen. We're like, and what you create is this like very sterile vanilla place where someone is walking very carefully on this tightrope because they don't want to make mistakes. And you can see it because when companies start using the word innovation, they're most likely the least innovative company that you could find. So we get into the tryst. And my staff keep going, we've got one or two people and they're like, what now? What next? And I'm like, I don't know, George. I've never been through a global pandemic. Have you? What I learned in the COVID patch was that it was a real testing of my mettle. I was just actually fortunate that I had absolutely no choice but to make it work. I had no one to go to for help post that. There was no one who could bail me out with money. So not an option. And it is unbelievable what you will come up with when you are forced to. Like, just think about it for you guys. I promise you, we often make like excuses for the things we can't do, but just let me grab one of your kids, put a gun to their head and tell, could you get this right? I promise you, you find some unbelievable force to get it going. And every time something came in my way, load shedding then hit in the middle of last year. I wouldn't say unexpected, but it really got bad. And I don't know if you've noticed, it's like a 1,500 square meter building. And when you have no generator or inverter, it is a nightmare to run client events. Okay, well, just hire a generator. Okay, it's just 10 grand every day that you do it. So it was like this. And there were times, honestly, guys, where I was just sitting with my head in my hands, where I wanted to cry, where I wanted to crack, where I honestly thought like, and I'm leveling with you, I'm not saying I would have committed suicide, but part of me got the idea of why people get to a point that pressure is so that it feels like the roof is caving in on you from every example. Now, when people on the outside, they'll say to you, but it's not so bad. But it's like, well, just wait until everybody's asking you for payments. And the last thing you can ever do is not pay your staff. Because as soon as you lose that trust, that's gone, right? So for the first few months, I had such an antiness toward pain. But it was that necessity that brought me out of it. It was unbelievable what happened. And quite quickly, I started to learn that I was very good at not repeating mistakes because my life suddenly depended on it. And I got unbelievably better every few months. What would have taken me a few years to learn took me a few weeks to learn because suddenly, like, I had no choice. And I started to develop this irrational comfort around pain. Again, I'm not saying I was looking for the mistake, like looking to make mistakes. And I think it's okay for you to feel what you feel when mistakes happen. We hate the feeling, but you also know that it's good for you. It brings me to one of two of my last points, which is that human beings are binary by nature. We tend to do this thing where we're on or we're off, we're good or we're bad, we're up or we're down. We can never be both. So let me ask you a simple question. Can you have a job? Can you be grateful to be getting a salary, have a roof over your head, have food, and at the same time, can you be simultaneously under tremendous work pressure? You have a little family. You feel this like angst from every corner. Can both be true? Can you be grateful for what you've got and feel overwhelmingly pressurized? So I just want to remind you of something simple, that you are not a binary creature. Your life lives on a spectrum, excepting for every facet of your life, there's multiple spectrums. And so you are this deeply dynamic human being that is good and bad. Like, I've never been more tired and I've never been more grateful for what I've got as I stand on this stage. And you realize you can be both. So mistakes Mistakes is one of those things that you can simultaneously look at the same way. You can hate making them, but simultaneously know that they're very good for you, provided you're able to sit back, introspect, understand what you got wrong, and fix the lesson. I really want to encourage you to fuck up as much as humanly possible without repeating the same mistake. And lastly, and I'm going to tie this all back, one of the greatest lessons I learned around leadership, specifically with our team, was to be okay with crying in front of my people. I don't wear that as a badge of honor in a sense, but then in another part I absolutely do. They will bear witness to there have been times where I've just sat in front of them and said, I don't know. And I'm just so emotionally shot and so emotionally broken from not having the answer and having to admit it. And the irony is I've actually seen some of our greatest growth spurts coming from the answer, I don't know. See, this thing around leadership I think is confusing because we're constantly telling, if you want to be a good leader, do this, do this, do this, do this. I don't think it works that way. I think you can see the value of a good leader versus a bad leader in our country. I'm not getting political. I'm saying you can see what happens when something is managed well and when something is managed poorly. You see it in countries, you see it in companies. So we should never shy away from how important leadership is. But we should also do everything to shy away from the cliches. And the cliches for me are as follows. You can't tell people what to do, you have to show them. In order to show them, you have to become the very thing that you want them to be. But you're never going to be perfect, so you have to be brutally okay with mistakes. In fact, you actually have to welcome them. But you don't want to make the same mistakes over and over because that means you're not learning the lesson and then you look like a pupil. Turns out we don't like pupils. Again, I'm just making sure that you're awake. And in doing this, you have to get the story straight in your head. Struggling with at the moment is a form of psychosis in South Africa. We're struggling with like a broken psychology. Because healthy people want other people to grow, and broken people hurt broken people. And you see it everywhere. Now, this sounds pretty morbid, so I'm going to tie it into an upside. The best lesson I learned in the last few years is that because of technology and because of everything that's happening in the world, you don't need a designation or title to stand up and be a leader. You don't have to call a press conference to become one. The idea of a leader is just something that starts in your head. It's an idea, and then you practice it. You can't know your way to leadership, you do it. And anybody can basically become a leader. And it's interesting how other people gravitate toward really good leaders. I really want to encourage you in your space. I've seen it in my own business, that people who started more recently have just become leaders in the business. Not because they're like, one day I'm going to become a leader. They just started doing things, and other people started mimicking that, and I regard them as a leader. And it's amazing how when you see yourself as a leader, not from a title perspective, but from a mental and emotional perspective, how it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We've seen this with social media. In order to impact millions of people, you used to have to become an emperor or a prince of an entire country. Now you can be sitting in your undies in your parents' basement on Facebook and you can impact 1 million people. This is kind of the world that we're moving to, where everything's getting disrupted. You can become these things, but it much more sits here and much less about a title. I want to tell you that South Africa doesn't need millions and millions of people to stand up. Your company doesn't need millions and millions of people to stand up. If there are about 250 people in this audience tonight, you actually need a tiny handful, less than 5% of people, to start deciding that they're going to actually throw themselves toward being okay with making mistakes, experimenting often to learn that way, and being okay with the duality of I made the mistake and it's shit, and I made the mistake and it's great. And in that, I don't think it's complicated. I actually think leadership is quite simple. It's just not obvious to most, otherwise everybody would be doing it. I didn't have a lot of time with you tonight, but I wanted to encourage you, not only in your companies, but in this country. I travel the world, and I'm telling you, we live in the most beautiful country on earth. And I'm telling you, the greatest asset that South Africa has is actually its people. It turns out that we've got about 5% of the people who live in this country that ruin it for the other 95%. But the other 95% are the best people on this planet. I live between South Africa and Europe, and I see it all the time. They might be a bit more first world than we are. But I tell you, when I get back to South Africa and I talk to our people, I feel home. I don't say that lightly. And this country is bursting, and it's for small groups of people to become active citizens. Your companies are waiting for small bursts of people who just stand up one day and say, I'm going to just do more. I'm going to do bigger. I'm going to think bigger. I'm going to dream bigger. I'm going to be okay with mistakes. I'm going to be okay with failing to learn. You'll be remarkably surprised how people follow. And then what looks like craziness in the beginning, you look like a genius a few months later. Isn't that how it always works out? This leadership thing obviously needs greater unpacking for sure. I really want to encourage you that in 2024, it's okay to make these mistakes. And it's okay to create a culture of educated guesses and experimentation. In a world that's changing like this, rather than this, we can't predict what the future looks like. So we need a culture of experimentation. We need to move away from a factory type of thinking to a laboratory thinking. The schools are still built on a factory. You move from grade 1 to grade 2 to grade 3 to grade 4. You're like a conveyor belt. It needs laboratory. We throw little darts at the dartboard, but when you throw a dart, you have to be okay with the fact that it doesn't always land. And my final pro tip, because I think it's quite important. The best leaders in the world know how to slow down to speed up. I'm taking my own advice because this is my final gig for the entire year, and then I'm off. You've heard the classic saying that you can't give from an empty cup. It's so true, but I just want you to know that when you take small places to rest and you break the norm, like some of the first times I started taking time to rest, it was like, I'm going away in February. What do you mean you're going away in February? It's not December. I'm going to go for a walk around the park, and I'm just going to think deeply about the world on a Wednesday afternoon. What are you doing? It's not Saturday. Just know that anytime you try break ground, you are naturally met with resistance from the world around you. People mean well when they do that. But when you try rest on a Wednesday afternoon instead of a Saturday, you will get pushback. But one of the greatest issues that in the world is that all human beings tend to think in glances right now. We don't think deep because we've confused productivity with busyness. And you see it all the time. So we think that the faster we go and the more we show how busy we are, that we're actually being productive. But all we're doing is we think shallow in every form. And the greatest innovations, the greatest ideas, the greatest everything comes when we create space and time to be bored and think deeply. So I'm on a strike to end. I know I've got exactly a minute. I'm on a strike to end the idea of getting away from boredom. Getting away from being busy all the time. It's been a long year, peeps. I really do hope if you have the privilege to do so, that you go and you take some time as we close off this year. I really hope you go and take some time. And I don't just mean rest, but you get some restoration. These two are different. Rest is a thing you can do with enough sleep. Restoration is that you fill your soul with things that move you. And I really every one of you, because we need you to come out absolutely firing in 2024. We've got a country to make better, we've got an industry to improve, and we've got bazillions to make. So I want to just say from me to you, thank you so much for being here at the Tryst. You will never know how much it means that you were sitting in this building, and that from that guy who got told all the work was gone to be sitting here on 5 December looking out at this crowd and knowing that that idea can turn into a reality like this over 4 years. It's a beautiful thought and feeling. And to Wamly, you guys get it. You guys just get it. You get it because every event that you've ever run, you spend an enormous amount of money to create endless value for this. You jab constantly instead of going for the right hook. You're always trying to create value before you ask for anything. And I hope more companies learn from your example. Thank you very much for having me, and please give them a round of applause.
Well done. Geez, Mark, thank you so much. I tried to count the number of golden nuggets in that keynote, and I stopped. But I do want to ask, is there anyone sitting in here that has got a single one-liner of what you took from that, in line with Mark's intro, if one thing lands? So now you get that feeling, it's burning up in your heart, you want to raise your hand. Fran, don't point me, I'm going to say it. Yes, Paul. Restoration, filling your heart with things that move you. Thank you. Can someone resonate with that? Yes. Maybe one more. My right side. A one-liner that stood out. Yes, Dennis. Gratitude. Okay. Amazing. Filling your life with gratitude makes life and every day easy. Mark Sham, another round of applause. Phenomenal keynote. Thank you so much, brother. Hey?
Tom, give us hands. Give us hands. hands.
Thanks, bud. So here's mine that stood out. I need to get this right. Pain is the precursor to growth. Right? And without knowing, Mark didn't have a slide deck, without knowing what he was going to say, that landed so deeply for me right into this next segue around the rise of Wamly and welcoming HR tech to the future. Because let me tell you, when we set out to build this, there was anxiety. April 2020. Okay, can anybody remember what happened in April 2020? Can my clicker work? It must be on. There we go. April 2020, so much uncertainty around starting a tech company for HR in South Africa. Will this work? Is there a market for this? At the time, the concept of video interview did not exist in Africa from a local perspective. Doing it in a global pandemic, just the amount of uncertainty and ambiguity that was part of that journey was phenomenal. And we've never at any event spoke directly about Wamly. And the team asked me, like, Fran, are we ever going to do this? And I said, yes, we'll get to it. But I first want to build a community. I first want to, through the HR Roundtable, where's my HR Roundtable esteemed guests? Here you are in the front, welcome. Through our phenomenal clients, through our followers, through our employees, through our family members, I want to create this community where we're giving back to HR. For those of you who've been on the podcast solving I can't see everybody through the lights, but just a quick journey through our timeline. 2018, a complete side hustle of mine. I was playing around with the idea. I had a phenomenal creative name. It was called the E-Interview. Yes, I think Wamly is much better. By the way, Wamly, we help you create a work family. Wamly. 2020, Manus Broderick joined. We launched the MVP in August. 2021, we started gaining some traction. Investors came on board. We had our first 20 clients, over 100 demos done. In 2022, we added more features to the system. We reached 23 countries. We launched a podcast. I had the privilege of taking over as CEO. And then this year, we won Tech Startup of the Year in South Africa 2023. Thank you. And my take from Mark's talk is there was pain. There still is pain. Let me be the first to stand here on stage and be vulnerable and say this is not easy. Selling tech to HR in South Africa is not easy. I'm sorry if I keep on mailing you the whole time. But apart from just building tech, it's also changing mindset. Video interview is a relatively, well, it's better now than 3-4 years ago, but it's still a relatively new concept. If you're sitting here in the audience and you've never heard of it, that's perfectly fine. Be vulnerable. If I ask line managers, do you enjoy screening through CVs, spending 8 hours a day in interviews? All of them will say no, but then still we continue to do it. So it's been a painful, tough journey, but equally significant growth. Yes, from a numbers perspective, but on a personal level, on a team level, on a Wamly employee team level, with our clients, and thank you. And so it's such a privilege tonight to have 4 of our clients here with me, and they're going to be joining me on stage. Janelle is going to be up first, and how this will work is we'll introduce a challenge. The speaker will share the solution, how they went about it, and key learnings from it. It's going to be jam-packed, quick 15 minutes with a Q&A after every speaker, because as I promised, I want this to be interactive and engaging. But the point behind this is, again, giving back. Because you might be sitting with the same challenge, with the same problem, with the same project. And again, if you can take any learning from this, like Mark said from his talk, then we've achieved our goal. So, are we ready? Yes, let's do it. Can I go back to Janelle? Do I have to click or can you skip that for me, bud? Janelle, you can join me up on stage. Can we get a big hand for Janelle? Testing. All right, so Janelle, Mike, is it working? Yeah.
Testing.
There we go. So Janelle, maybe just quick intro. Who are you? Where do you work?
My name is Janelle, and I work at Derivco in Umhlanga. I started Derivco about 7 years ago. I come from a talent acquisition background and just fell in love with graduate recruitment, development, eat, breathe, sleep, dream, everything graduate, and that's what's brought me here.
Graduate specialist in a tech company in Umhlanga. Janelle, what was your challenge?
So our challenge was really multifaceted. It started off with, recruiting for senior roles in the tech industry these days has become increasingly more challenging. So one of the solutions to this problem that we came up with was to build a graduate program to grow those skills internally. And in order to do that, we had to hire those skills at a graduate level. But we also needed to make sure that we were allowing every single Africa, regardless of where they studied, where they were located, or how they were trained, an equal and fair opportunity to apply for the graduate program. And then to just completely turn our graduate recruitment process on its head. It was super manual. It took us months to review hundreds and thousands of CVs because we really wanted to give every single applicant the respect and consideration that they deserved when they came through our process.
Amazing. So I want to summarize, an audience, you might be in the same boat here. So what I hear you saying is that, one, we need to hire for this very specific senior talent. We, to be quite honest, don't always know where to find them, so we're going to grow them ourselves by creating a graduate program and then growing that talent from within. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah? Audience, you stuck with that problem as well? Any of you? I'm seeing like a one or two here. It's okay. Yes, Andrew, thank you. Building a graduate program, so much time, a lot of applications. What was some of the solution?
So one of the solutions that we had, obviously, was Wamly. So we took Wamly and we looked at the forms functionality that Wamly had, and we looked at how we could automate all the tedious and time-consuming tasks that we have. And for us, that was the screening process. So what we did is we took the forms and we clearly defined what the problem statement was, and that was that first step in the process that took up so much time for us as the team. It was frustrating. And also for the candidate. In order for us to give them a really quick process, we needed to have a solution that allowed them to go through the process really quickly. So we used the form by creating a lot of, basically incorporating all the questions of the basic minimum requirements that we needed out of the graduates. So and what the minimum requirements were, and we built that into the Wamly system. We were then able to filter by those minimum requirements. We still had the other candidates there, but what we wanted to do was give those candidates who fit that minimum requirement the full review process. And that allowed us to really focus on the human experience. Now, I'm talking weeks and months of time that we spent opening up CVs, looking at transcripts, trying to give every person the time of day that they really deserve. They've studied. Often these guys have come from families where they're the first person going through university. So for me, it's something that, and my team, we really cared about giving them that chance. So by freeing up all that time, we were able to focus on the human experience. We were able to focus on having conversations with them, building relationships with them. And I think in a time where technology and bots, I mean, how many of you go onto customer service and the first thing you met with is a bot? And
all of us.
How many times does that bot actually answer your question properly? Probably like 2 out of 10 times. It's super frustrating. And that was not...
Sorry, Janelle, you always go for the option, I want to speak to a human. Yes.
And then I have to answer like 5 more questions in order to get there. And that wasn't the experience that I wanted to leave our candidates with. I wanted to make them feel valued, heard, not just a number, be able to tell their story over and above what the limitations of a CV allows them to do.
Yeah.
So we took Wamly and we took our entire recruitment process and made it online. And for us, what that allowed us to do was allow candidates in any geographical location, be it Nelson Mandela Bay, the Western Cape, go through, not just apply, but go through the whole recruitment process, regardless of their socioeconomic limitations or geographic limitations, not worry about money for travel. Where am I going to get a suit? How am I going to get time off university? For us, we wanted to make that experience so seamless and so fluid that they could sit there and have that conversation with us and feel so comfortable and at ease.
Amazing. One of the things that you mentioned here is really understanding the criteria up front, allowing masses in so that you can fairly and effectively filter. Can you just maybe talk us through that, required from, I guess, a job description and a line manager input perspective?
Yeah, so what we did is we took our job profile or job description and we looked at our technical competencies and our behavioral competencies, and we used ChatGPT. So at Derivco, we're a tech company, we actually have built our own GPT system. So it's very integrated into our own internal systems, and we use what we call Niels GPT. It's a grumpy architect that we have that works for us.
Niels.
Niels, yeah, he's an actual employee. And we put in all of the job description and the requirements, and we allowed it to help us write those questions so that we could effectively get the right level of information that we needed at the very beginning of the process.
Yeah.
So that instead of spending weeks and months screening all these CVs, we could just filter on what that ideal candidate looked like, because we knew that those questions were competency-based, both behavioral and technical.
Phenomenal.
And this beautiful talent pool that we knew that we could work with.
Yeah. And Janelle, you spoke about the human experience. Everything is bots, everything is machines. Did you actually engage with the candidates post the process around, because your intention was a human experience. What did they say?
Yeah, so the whole thing with our team is we are very into building relationships. So I'll tell you a bit of a story. We work with a scholarship foundation in South Africa, and in May this year, we went to attend one of the events. And in May, we met this individual, and we built a relationship with him, went through the whole process with Wamly. And when I sat in the interview with him at the end of the process about a month ago, or no, about 2 weeks ago, he was just overjoyed with the amount of care and intention that we had with building relationship with him. So he knew that with every step of the way, we wanted to get to know him. There was always a phone call, there was always a message. He's getting married on Saturday. A little shout out to Sean, congratulations for your wedding. Yeah, thank you for the clap. And that's the level of care that Wamly allows its clients to give. All those weeks and months that we took reviewing paperwork, I can now sit there and build relationships with people like Sean and all of my other candidates.
Phenomenal.
And have people who are sitting with multiple offers go, I just want to work for you guys.
Yes, phenomenal. Well done. Janelle, please share with the audience at the back end of this key learnings from going through a process like this, from your perspective.
So I'm sure Francois and the team knows I kind of turned Wamly on its head a little bit.
Let me just qualify that. So the one day I phoned Janelle, I said, Janelle, I would really love some radically honest feedback. It's a value at Wamly, radical honesty, give it to me. And for 45 minutes, she gave me radical honest feedback, which I want to publicly thank you for. Service providers should always be open and ask for feedback.
What we did is we used Wamly as our very first step of the process. Now, anyone in graduate recruitment, and I know Pumzile, you have first-hand accounts of this, you get thousands of people coming through. Wamly allows you to give candidates the opportunity to feel heard by enabling them to do that one-way interview, regardless of whether they meet that minimum requirement or not. So yes, they filled out that form, but they immediately get the opportunity to do the one-way video interview. And for us, why that was so important is, one, it's the candidate experience. I'm feeling valued, I'm feeling heard, I'm not just a piece of paper. Someone actually took the time out, and we do review every single video. And what that also allows your team to do is, just because they don't fit your graduate program, it doesn't mean they're not a fit for a role outside of your team in another part of the organization, or you can pipeline them for future talent. And I think that's a really important future thinking advantage that Wamly gives the team. We did something really cool as well. Shout out to Bianca for putting us on this. Bianca from the Wamly team. So we took a testimonial video that we made from previous graduates talking about their experience, where they came from, where they are now, and we put that at the very first point of our application process. So before you even went through any part of our process, you sat and you watched this video. And what that did is it gave the graduates or the students coming through a real life, tangible experience on what it would be like to be a part of our program. It made them feel a part of the family before they even joined the family. And the feedback there was amazing as well. And I think one of the key things is communication. I mean, the concept of ghosting. How many of you have heard about the concept of ghosting in recruitment and talent acquisition? How many of you have been ghosted?
Yes.
Hey? It's not a nice feeling, right? That's never a feeling that our team ever wants anyone to go through. So what we do up front when we're setting those minimum requirements, when we're building the forms, when we're setting everything up in Wamly is clearly define those communication scenarios. Who is a proceed, who is a decline, and who is a pipeline? Like who is someone who is future talent? And we effectively use, so there's a tag functionality in Wamly, I'm sure you're all aware of, where everyone knows in the team who's getting what communication when. So at no point you feel that I've been left behind, I'm not valued, that am I not up to scratch. You're constantly being kept up to date.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Chanel. I think what I take away from that is, yes, technology is such a powerful enabler to replace the mundane, repetitive tasks that we all hate doing, but one should never ignore the power of human touch. A basic phone call, a basic follow-up, an intro video, sharing a bit of who you are, your brand, your EVP, making them feel part of the family before they're part of the family. That's a super powerful takeaway. So, yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, I think one of the last things is what we always try to leave our candidates with is a learning. So whether you're hired or not, you learn something from Derivco. And I think what that does is, even though I don't hire you now, in 4 years' time, you remember that experience. You fundamentally remember that experience where Francois said, you know, you shouldn't have used a for loop here. Maybe you should use this. Here, go on to lead code, try this out. And you remember that experience when you're a senior developer. And I think that's the experience. Again, I'm part of the family without even being a part of the family.
Incredible. Incredible. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to open up the floor for one or two questions for Janelle. Do we have a mic roaming around? Yeah, we do. There's a question. Please remember, after each speaker, we'll have a small Q&A and then one with everybody back on stage.
All right, good evening, everyone. I love what you've done with this platform. Just a question for you, Janelle, in terms of your experience, right? You said you facilitate or you look at all the videos, you get thousands of applications, and you look at all the videos. From a time perspective, was that shorter than looking at CVs? Because if let's say it's a 2-minute or 3-minute video that a candidate does, whereas when you're looking at a CV, sometimes it can take you a minute or two just to see what you're looking for, or you can use filtering systems to find exactly what you're looking for. So is there really the time to look at all the videos if you have 1,000 applications? And secondly, my other question is cultural bias. All right. Naturally, as people, we are oriented towards people who look, talk, act like us. Do you think that plays a role in terms of the videos and looking at the candidates? That has an influence who gets shortlisted and put in for an interview? Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. So the first question, time. So in any recruitment process, you've planned out your funnel, you've planned out your timelines, and for us, we know that when the candidates are going through technical assessments and psychometric assessments, we're sitting with a lot of free time. So what we do is we use that time and we have very clear identifiers for the video assessment, so essentially like a marking rubric, if you will. So we know that if we do not hear what we are looking for in the answer for the graduate program, we know to mark it a certain way, but we also know what we're looking for from a company perspective. So we work very closely with our talent acquisition team, and we know what sort of roles and skills they're looking for. So we know if someone's talking about maybe systems development or IT, we can hand them over to one of the talent acquisition specialists. But it's really utilizing that time where you're not interacting with the candidate. It's that time that you're allowing the system to do the work for you to, again, give that human experience, get back to that candidate, phone the candidate. You're not a fit for the grad program, but have you ever thought of, you're really into cybersecurity, let me hook you up with one of my people there. The second part of your question, culture, I'm a firm believer that you don't hire for culture fit. You hire for culture add. So we're not all looking for squares or a Fisher-Price toy. We're not all looking for circles. We want rainbows. We want diamonds. We want, rhombuses. We want different types of personality, because I know that every time that I'm in a room with a bunch of people from you, from all of your life experiences and from where you come from. So I don't think that I don't speak for anyone else, but just for our team, what we're looking for is a sparkle that potentially we haven't seen before, not to fit in, but to add.
Amazing.
I don't know if that answers the question.
Amazing. One last question. Yep.
Hi everyone, I'm Natasha from Mesa Internet. So we do training and obviously workforce of the future. We are one of the very newer clients of Wamly. We've really put it to the test. And what I mean by that, and I'm going to actually answer the gentleman's question there. So we've probably we've interviewed over the 2 months over 450 graduates. And if I say they've got their BSc science diplomas, everything looks so great on paper. So 1 minute screen, I agree with you. Gosh, then you got to train them and put them through certifications. Then you see a whole new world. So we almost put them in an incubator model, but you see these students, they come from different locations, different backgrounds, and we walk the journey, and then you let them do the one-way video Wamly. Oh, good heavens. First question you ask, tell me about yourself. So nobody seems to know what to tell anybody about themselves. It's like, I'm a gardener, I love studying, or it's the Google script, blah, blah, blah. But having uploaded, I think, Francia, we've got about 130 students that did their one-way videos. And what I realized, we're living in a country with so much diversity. And it's not about them fitting into your culture. It is about where they come from. Most of these students uploaded their videos at 1:30 in the morning because that was the only time they had actually electricity. That was the only time they could actually borrow a suit or a shirt or a tie to actually do their video. I've been humbled by the process of Wamly. Being in talent mapping, talent accelerating, you name it, all those big words. And HR, I love you to bits, but seriously, let's move on with times. We have amazing people out there, and especially starting from the youth, where they're going to go. I mean, IT is so huge, they didn't even know. They were so shocked about the Wamly platform, they didn't even know what to do. Some of them had phones. We had to reboot, redesign, re-put in whatever for them to be able to do their one-way videos. But the point that I want to make is I've never been so humbled by getting to know people from where they come from.
Thank you.
Having to sit in a shack with 17 people living there where they had to do their one-way video and everybody screaming, it's time to eat, the little one, whatever. I raise my hand for the future of the world. This is a platform where they can be themselves, where they can actually showcase where they come from. And all they want is just an opportunity. And guess what? What we do is first impressions last. HR first impressions last. If the CV doesn't tick off the 5 key weightings, off goes the CV. If the person doesn't look the part or communicate the part, shift the CV. No. Wamly gives the platform where every single person can be and showcase where they come from.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, Janelle, thank you so much. There'll be an opportunity to ask Janelle another question in a bit, and then afterwards, of course, you'll see her walk around. Thank you so much, Janelle. Rostand, thank you so much. Anton, please join me up on stage. That whistle was for him, not for me, right?
Testing.
Anton, if you can introduce yourself to the audience and your business, and we'll get into your challenge.
Yeah, firstly, thanks, Fran, for the invite and being able to speak with all of you today. I really appreciate it. So my name's Anton, as you can see on the screen. Background in industrial engineering, so processes, systems, optimization, digital transformation, which I'll touch a bit about in a moment. I work for a company called Eurex. We sell hearing aids in the US. A little company, tiny tip of Africa, making big waves on the global front. We've recently, I don't know, maybe some of you in the audience are familiar with a company called Sakana. They collect consumer insight and data in the US. And we've, as of the end of October, been identified, factually data-backed statement that I'm going to make now as the #1 OTC hearing brand in the US by market share. So
Phenomenal.
absolutely amazing feat, amazing team, but we'll get into that.
I want to say 2 things before we get into it. Firstly, I'm so thankful that I can have a guest who's not in HR, but a line manager, right? And I know the majority of us here are HR, and I'm so sorry I didn't catch your name. I can't see the passionate Natasha. Hello, Natasha. Natasha just indirectly spoke about that as well. But it's phenomenal to have you here, Anton, and I'm particularly looking forward to understanding how Eurex went about, and you'll share your problem in a second, incorporating Wamly into your hiring process from a manager and from a process perspective. So let's get into it. What was the challenge?
Yeah, so look, I mean, given the history that I briefly shared with you guys now, we are in constant hypergrowth or hyperscale, and it's, in the South African context, very difficult to find quality talent en masse. So that was one of the big challenges that we faced back then, and we still facing now. I think if you go to our website, we've got 30 vacancies permanently vacant, just always recruiting. And it really was a case of trying to align diaries and kind of find time to spend on the recruitment process. I think the question that he asked regarding viewing a CV versus watching a Wamly, the important part for me about that is you might be screening 10 CVs and all of them end up taking some of your time out of your calendar and the calendar of other colleagues that you work with, and 1 out of 10 times they are a fit. Whereas with Wamly, you almost guarantee yourself the opportunity that when you end up meeting with that person in that first round interview, you've already kind of gotten to know them. You've seen them, you know how they speak, you know how they present themselves, and your hit rate is a lot higher than just kind of one-dimensionally looking at a CV and hoping to find the right candidate by reading what they've got to say about themselves. So that was a big part of it for us. And just from a process optimization perspective, Fran, I think really trying to build as big a top funnel as possible. You want as many candidates looking for the right job, especially in the tech sector. We're a tech business as well. So we recruit a ton of developers. You want that funnel to be as big as possible and to be able to screen them down into your process, which in our world is a very extensive process. And I granted that it's not as optimal as it can be, but we really are looking for the top of the top. To just optimize that and make sure that your top of funnel kind of flows well into the person that you end up meeting, that you put time aside for, not just in your own diary, but other colleagues and people part of the recruitment process, to get to that point so that you kind of, let's say, maximize the opportunity of success for those candidates.
And Anton, I can imagine operations in the US, employees in the UK, employees in Australia, like just time zones is an issue, right?
Yeah, so if anyone in the audience has ever tried to coordinate a meeting between South African folk, a tech league based in Australia, and some customers in the US, you'd understand our pain. So absolutely, that's definitely part of the challenge. And I think platforms like Wamly go a long way to solve for that.
Yeah.
So we're building out a really international team. Still kind of the heart of the company based in South Africa, proudly South African. We'll say that at every corner we get the opportunity to say that. But really we have a global footprint. We've got a fairly decent sized team in the US, a product owner for development based in the UK, tech lead in Australia, and some other resources across the globe. So Wamly really helped us bridge that gap of access to the market, access to top talent, and just maybe a kind of a internal story or personal story that I'm keen on sharing. The best talent in the world isn't necessarily out there. It oftentimes is locally based. I think we've got some of the best technical talent in the world, and I think it speaks to the heart of South Africans, the heart of problem solving, the fact that we face dire circumstances oftentimes in life, and we're left with no other choice than to come up with solutions that aren't necessarily practical at the point in which you're coming up with these solutions. So really, really proud to call myself a South African, and really proud to keep the majority of our recruitment force based in South Africa.
That's incredible. I'm not too sure what the research has to say around resilience, but I'm sure we're right up there in terms of countries. Anton, how did you go about implementing a solution for hyperscale? We are exploding. For those of you who want to Google here, it's just a phenomenal South African story of what award did you win recently? Top 100?
So we were fortunate enough to feature in Time magazine. Maybe some of you would be familiar with Time magazine. It's the first time ever that a South African company features in Time magazine.
Yeah.
So thank you. Yeah, so the award was top 100 companies in the world. We're in the leader category of Time magazine, so that was really an amazing feat, and speaks to and testimony to the resource and the team and just what we've been able to achieve.
Amazing. So how did we go about the solution?
So initially, I think digital transformation, technology, people, it's this kind of weird space where no one really knows kind of how technology fits into processes and when is the right time to transform your business. And as with most startups in the South African context, and I guess across the world as well, you start out very manually. So everything is either an Excel sheet or some Lucid or Draw.io process flow, and you just wing it. You hope to figure it out over time, and then you kind of reach this point in time where you start asking yourself, how do I make this scalable? So I've figured out the process works, but how do I make it scalable? And that was the question and we still keep asking ourselves this today. What can we do differently to ensure scale? So in startup culture specifically, you've got agility, velocity, and scalability. And more often than not, scalability is kind of left on the wayside because everyone wants to make quick decisions and everyone wants to be first to market and kind of capitalize on the market and maintain market share. But scalability very often catches up with businesses in the startup phase. And I think the statistic says less than 10% of startup businesses make it past year 5, or some ridiculous statistic. Don't quote me on it. And really that speaks to the scalability of what it is that you're doing as a company. So we were I don't want to call it a dilemma, but we realized that there was this issue of we need to scale what we've got going here, because already, even with our manual processes, which we figured out to the T, we can't keep up with acquiring top talent. So that's where Wamly came into the picture. I think it really helped us with the optimization of the process of acquiring top talent, being able to screen them, being able to avoid the, let's call it, very subjective view of a one-dimensional CV, basing all your recruitment decisions off of a piece of paper and never having met someone. So really kind of establishing that people relationship with a candidate that applies to work for your company. And I think that's critically important in our space. I think the people aspect, Janelle also spoke about that. People are important. People are the future of the company. It's not people and technology, it's people with technology. Sure. And that's really the thing that Wamly brought about scalability to our business.
And Anton, key learnings in going from this manual Excel, Google Drive, spending hours screening CVs, to introducing digital, going digitize and enabling the scale?
I think the first thing that you need to realize and make your peace with is before you head into digital transformation, you know nothing. And most of us really didn't know much. And it really is a journey. And there's a bit of a quote referring to the interconnectedness of science and art that really resonates with me. Technology and talent come in. So realize and accept the fact that you don't know much, if anything at all, when you're heading into this journey, and be open to learn. I think Mark hit the nail on the head earlier when he spoke about making as many mistakes as you humanly possibly can, but making them once. So sure, learn from them, but really embrace the change, embrace the technology, embrace making mistakes, seeing the learnings for what they are, and adapting, being adaptable. I think that's a key part of success in the era that we find ourselves in. There are many pieces of technology out there, and around the corner, someone's going to try and sell you a piece of tech that promises the moon and the stars, and really it's just automation in Excel. It's a joke. But no, really, just be adaptable, and when you realize that something doesn't work for your business, change it. Don't be so stagnant on the way in which something was defined or process being written or people becoming accustomed to certain ways of work or ways of doing things. Be adaptable and be honest with yourself and your workforce. I think Mark also alluded to it earlier regarding the why, and I think the why is critically important, especially as leaders of industry, especially as leaders of the companies you guys represent today. If you don't know why, what do you think your staff is going to wonder? I mean, there's no world in which if you're not clear on why we're doing something, your staff would follow suit. So the why is critically important, translating that message to your staff complement for them to understand the why, and that's how they buy in, and that's how they become loyal to your business, and that's how recruitment also starts translating into an organic system, whereas you might now be spending a lot of money maybe on LinkedIn ads or really trying to promote your business. As soon as it becomes this organic engine and people just want to work for you, that's when you know you're doing the right kind of stuff.
Sure. I often speak with clients where I challenge them to think about why you are in this current process that you're in, throwing away legacy systems, not understanding why we've got this or that. And even in designing something new, Anton, I can imagine there are iterations, right? You mentioned earlier that your process, you still want to increase and enhance and create more efficiency. So the challenge and the opportunity is also to go, once I've designed it, it's not done. Let's allow for feedback to come back in from employees that came through the process, line managers in the process, and continue to refine it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think right now we've got about a 7-step recruitment process. Maybe some of you run on 1 or 2 steps.
I think there's a bank that also has 7 steps.
It works for us, or it has worked for us to date, but we all also know how daunting it must be as a candidate going through this process, being confronted with step by step by step, and then do this, and psychs, and technical assessments, and come into the office, and so many things related to this process. And we realize and acknowledge the fact that it isn't perfect, but we're also really trying to get to know you through the process. Recruitment isn't a one-sided conversation of getting someone who could work in your business. It's really being able to find the individual that you know will flourish in your business. They need to want to work there every single day of the week. One thing that I'm proud of the team for doing, and I do this myself as well in many interviews, is and it kind of speaks to the why component as well, is for me it's super important that if you want to work for Year X, are you passionate about what it is that we're doing? Are you passionate about making a difference? And can you see kind of the golden thread throughout all the different pieces of the puzzle is contributing to a larger societal impact, which is a core value statement of the business. So that's something that's critically important to me, and I would rather have 7 steps in the process and know that the candidate we found at the end of it is 99% of the time the right candidate, than making that mistake, and that mistake being detrimental to the larger team that has to deal with the fallout. So yes, I understand the process is extensive, but and we are, to your point, definitely optimizing that as we progress, trying to speed that up, because especially when you try and recruit tech talent, I'm sure, Janelle, you're also quite aware, they've got offers waiting, and they push you to speed up that process and get to offer stage as quickly as possible because they want to compare the numbers. That's what it's about. And to be completely frank, that's typically not the kind of candidate that we're looking for in the business. To my earlier point, it really needs to be someone who's passionate about what it is that we do, and they want to work there, and they want to walk the journey with us, and they want to feature in Time Magazine, and they want to read our reviews channel on Slack, and read the story about the gentleman who forgot the fact that when you walk in snow, it makes a sound, and he was so surprised by wearing hearing aids, he's now able to hear the snow he's walking in, and he thought there was something wrong or someone's following him. It's these little stories that really make a big impact in the lives of the people that work for us.
I often say that it's okay to have multiple steps in your process as long as every step is giving you incremental usefulness or utility, bringing you closer to understanding that candidate and also keeping them engaged. So it's when we repeat the same steps with the same questions just to different audiences to tick boxes where there's a lack of, less efficiency. So well done, Anton. I think that's a phenomenal story and a lot we can learn from. So thank you so much. Appreciate that.
And appreciate it.
Do we have questions for Anton? Yes, there at the back.
With the 7 steps that you have for the interview, what is your staff turnover rate?
Staff turnover rate from an internal perspective, it's actually very, very low. Caveat, there are 2 parts of the business. So one part is a call center environment where staff turnover is typically quite high. From a call center perspective, we're running between 15 and 20%. And then from the other side of the business, it's actually substantially low. I think the most recent statistic when we looked at the staff turnover rate for the past closed out financial year was around about 5% over the entire period. I guess it's also an unfair statistic given the fact that we're recruiting so many people that the base of which you're measuring the statistic on is constantly growing. So maybe initially at the start of the year it was 8 or 9%, but overall, given where you end up from a staff number perspective, it was about 5%.
Amazing. Yes. Morne. Shanae, you getting your steps in? Thanks, Morne.
Thank you, Anton. I really enjoyed that. What really resonated with me was where you spoke about you wanted your candidates to not only show passion for the company, but also the mission that you're working towards. And so I also work at a non-profit company, so that's why I'm interested in this idea. So I'm wondering, that golden thread you spoke about, how do you assess or measure that? How do you find out whether a candidate wants to work towards that mission and not just for the company? Is it a specific question, or is it like a subjective feeling that your panel members throughout your 7-step process feel? Or I'm curious about that.
I love this question. So we're very intentional about trying to understand people's motivations to want to work for the company. A lot of our Wamly questions are geared in a specific way to try and glean certain behavioral or psychological traits that a person can have or a candidate can have. And to your point earlier as well, the gentleman who asked the question about balancing time and for Wamlys and looking at CVs, we've gotten to a point where we're so sensitive to the type of answer or response that a candidate gives that you don't have to watch all 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 questions. You know fairly quickly whether this is the right candidate or not, whether they're doing this Wamly with the right intentions and the right attitude, and whether they are really looking for something because they want to make a difference, or whether they want to jump because salary increase or hate their boss or whatever the background reasoning is. And I'm not saying those candidates aren't welcome. It's actually very apparent throughout the process. So then when you reach kind of first stage of interview, you start probing the why and you start probing the motivation for wanting to move. Back to the golden thread part, it's the magical thing about the way in which we operate as a business. We're still very much kind of startup culture, even though we're close to 200 employees now. We still really pride ourselves in sticking up your hand, even though it's not your scope, or getting involved in things that have nothing to do with your day job. And that speaks to, or rather, it's a testimony to getting the right people in the team, and for them really to have that motivation to want to work for the company. The golden thread is an interesting one because, yes, even someone who's part of the IT administration team, office administrator, or call center agents, quite obvious actually, but there are certain roles in the company that you might not easily be able to tie back to that golden thread of you that makes this difference in the larger scheme of things. And really those things are, we normalize and encourage speaking about those things often. Having conversations about performance reviews twice a year. We've got 40% of the weighting contributing to Hurex's way of work. It speaks to your contribution to the company, your willingness to go above and beyond the projects or initiatives that aren't part of your scope that you get involved in. So we keep on kind of normalizing that conversation, and it's a recipe that's proven to work so far. Fingers crossed it keeps working.
Phenomenal. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, Anton, for sharing. It's been a great privilege. Awesome. Thank you, brother. All right, next up we have Phumzile. Woohoo! Here's a fan crowd. You're going to try? There we go. All right, Phumzile, please share with the audience who you are and the organization that you represent.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Phumzile Hlajwayo. I am working for Altron, looking after 3 organizations within the group, which is Altron Systems Integration, Altron Managed Solutions, and Altron Carabiner, which is more Microsoft sort of the business.
Quick backstory, I met Phumzile for the very first time at our first Wamly event, and we were standing and having a conversation. I said, Phumzile, thank you for being here. I know it's in the week, there's traffic, there's load shedding, and then Phumzile said, Fran, our office is in this complex right across the lawn. So she walked over. So thank you for being here. Phumzile, what was your challenge?
Maybe to add on what he is saying, so when we had a conversation, it was after he presented. Being the odd one, I thought, you know what, I want this toy. I need this new toy that I'm hearing about in this session. So yeah, we got a toy.
I'm so glad you got the toy. What did you do with the toy? What was your problem?
Okay, our problem was really around limited skills in the technology environment. And by the way, for those who don't know, Altron is a digital transformation organization. Those who are familiar with the industry, you will understand that when it comes to skills like your data analysts, your DevOps, your developers, business analysts, and all these highly scarce skills, technology skills, it's really, really a challenge in this country and globally. So that was our issue. And the other issue as well was being the company that is values-based, looking at the unemployment rate in this country, how do we balance the two? Scarce skills and high unemployment rate. On top of that, we also wanted to address the issue of demographics within our organization. Traditionally, the technology environment is dominated by males, less females compared to the other gender, and also if you look at other demographics as well. So we wanted to address that. And that came with the challenge of location. If you're looking at historically disadvantaged individuals, they all over and limited resources, how do they get to the office for interviews? How do they actually prepare themselves to look in a certain way for interviews? On time, face to face. So we needed an intervention. There was a limit as well in terms of time. We were chasing time in terms of the timelines the graduates had to start because the business was really in need of resources to be trained for different customers and also to develop certain products within the organization. So time was an issue. And there was no way we do everything that we wanted to do within that limited.
And just to clarify, Bumzile, how many would you want?
That's where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about volumes. We were actually looking for 80 graduates. That is 55 for one of the companies, which is systems integration, and then 25 for Carabiner side. So it's 80. Then we also wanted to onboard learners, which is 25. So all in all is like 100 in 1 month. So we had 3 months to actually do everything and have people onboarded. So the challenge as well with regards to resources to do the interviews. In our environment, people's times are billable.
Yeah.
You have managers that are in the customers and they don't have time. People don't have time to actually do interviews.
Yeah.
You can do the interviews once, one round, and all other steps, it comprises of other aspects of the discussion or engagement with the candidates, like psychometric assessment or completing sort of a line and so on. So there was no way we could have achieved that manually. That is why we needed an intervention through Wamly.
Phenomenal. So you needed to find 100 candidates from a specific demographic.
Correct.
And complete that entire process in 3 months.
That's correct.
Okay. How did you go about doing it?
Okay, so like I said earlier, I met you here. I thought this is something that we can use with what we have in mind. That was last year, I think early last year, 2022. So we actually onboarded Wamly early this year. And we started the process in June when we started with the recruitment of the graduates. What we liked is really the flexibility with Wamly. Bianca, shout out. We were a bit of a headache in terms of incorporating assessments, incorporating all the stuff. Those are the challenges you get in terms of working with the tech company. So yeah, we actually had to incorporate certain things. So we actually equipped our managers with the assistance of Wamly. For us, in terms of the questions that were online on the system, it was very important that we also included the aspect of values, where the candidate actually respond to those questions around values on their videos, when they do the videos. So we had a couple of questions that were loaded online. And the biggest challenge as well with the graduates, looking at the demographics, where people were coming from. Natasha at the back actually mentioned that. I didn't see her. But I heard, the sensitivity and the challenges that you will be faced with if you are looking at men. So provided flexibility. That is what we've realized, that, people don't actually have to come at the office or be on Teams. They actually can do video at their own time, flexibility, and be decent. It actually provided people with an opportunity of dignity, if I may say, when they were doing the videos. So we rolled out the process. Everybody was on board. Everybody was trained. What we actually had to do was to really review these videos. And it's very interesting, the energy that you get from the videos compared to the paper, which is the CV. It's very interesting how people are themselves. They are free when they actually do or conduct the discussions with themselves through the video. Yes. So it was smooth, although there were a couple of hiccups, but we actually worked through those hiccups during the period.
Amazing. And Phumzile, key learnings from a project like this, because you're trying to find individuals that don't necessarily have the latest iPhone in an uncapped internet environment with a Zara suit. For those of you like Zara, what were the key learnings Because the good news is you found the 100.
Definitely, we did find the 100. What we actually learned, for me specifically, it's the importance of fit for purpose for a process. Looking at different generations, this platform, it worked well for us with the generation of graduates. People were able to actually express themselves in a way that is convenient by being provided this opportunity to possibly they've done these videos over and over again and loaded what they believe is the best. Actually, it actually represents who they are the best, compared to sitting in the interview with a panel, the traditional interview that we do in most of the companies, where there is a panel of 5 people intimidating the youngster and the graduate during the interview. I'm not saying there is everything wrong with it, but we also need to put ourselves in the shoes of this youngster that is fresh from varsity. Even the adults, I get intimidated during the interviews if it's a big panel. I'm intimidated even now with you in this room. So you can imagine in terms of this youngster coming from varsity, 6 of you, 2 line managers, HR person, this, that in the room. So this really provided the true person coming through during those interviews. Generational fitness, I think it is fit for the new world out there. Some of us, I think, for some of us born in the 1970s, it's a challenge. I mean, I looked at my LinkedIn. I don't remember any video that I've posted on LinkedIn. Same thing as well as TikTok. But this generation, this is what they need.
Yes.
They need a platform like this when it comes to engaging with organizations.
Phumzile, the fact that you mentioned TikTok is already fantastic. I want to thank you. If you go to Phumzile's LinkedIn, you'll actually see a photo of her and all the graduates that they appointed. It's a phenomenal story. Well done. I think, people often ask me, what is our why? On an existential level, and I say there's this weird dichotomy in South Africa where we have hundreds of people looking for jobs, we have clients looking to appoint people, and if Wamly can be a drop and a connection in a informal settlement, as Natasha mentioned earlier, and give that opportunity where, like Janelle said, everybody can go through an interview, then we can contribute to that. So thank you so much. Questions for Phumzile? Andrew, yes.
Is the speaker allowed to ask questions?
I don't necessarily have a question for you, but I'd rather like to commend you on the opportunities that you've created for young South Africans. Being from an IT organization myself, I know those challenges are so infinite. And it's very hard to get the balance right from an employment equity point of view from reaching those targets. So I don't have a question for you. I just want to say well done. It's a tremendous effort. Well done.
And maybe to add on what he's saying, it's really a challenge. It really takes courage for an organization to make those kinds of decisions, because in our industry, we often complain about lack of skills, but the question is, what are we doing? And these are the questions that we need to ask in the boardrooms. What is it that we are doing? Why do we keep on complaining? Why can't we be part of the solutions rather than complaining? And besides that, in terms of really fast-tracking their skills, what we're doing, we really put them through certification. I mean, you will know that is one critical, that's your bank certification. They need to be certified. So we actually put them through the process of being certified with different vendors like your Microsoft, Cisco, AWS, and all the certification that you require within the technology environment.
Thanks. Yeah, Dennis. Oh, there's a question. Okay, guys, I see 3 more hands. I'm also sensing some antsiness, which is completely normal. We don't often sit for almost 3 hours. So I want to respect everybody and our time. So let's allow for another question. Please keep your questions for when everybody's back on stage. If you aren't able to ask, then please find Pumzile. She looks lovely in orange tonight when we network, eat, and have a drink. So, yeah, gentlemen there at the back. Hello, Eskom.
Is it low shedding?
Don't worry. The lights in our hearts won't go out. That was so cheesy, sorry.
Hi, Pumzile. My name is Colin from Straight. I'm an HR administrator, and my question for you is that I conduct basic screening, right, from applicants and stuff like that. So I ask basic questions like, where do you live? What is your current salary? What is your current salary expectation? I just want to know, using the Wamly platform, how is it any different from the basic screening that we do from applicants?
I think somebody can help me with regards to that. You didn't come across clearly. I didn't even get your name. I heard HR administrator. That's the only thing that I heard.
Just maybe clarify the question, please. Yeah. Yeah. Can I just clarify, do you mean what's the difference when you ask that in an in-person interview versus on a different platform, or is it on?
Okay, now I understand. Okay, there is no difference in terms of asking that directly to a person and Wamly asking that through the platform or online. The benefit and the difference is one, convenience, where the candidate is not sitting with 6 panel members or 4 panel members, but actually reading the questions and then preparing themselves to take a video responding to those questions and posting the video. The other difference is time by the hiring managers, by the HR team in terms of arranging the interviews, coordinating diaries, the availability of everyone within the business, which is always a challenge. I mean, we only able to do such things after 6 or 7, because during the day, business hours, it's a challenge at certain levels. And you can understand that in our business as well, the investors, it's senior managers, it's the executive of the area, and then the general manager. They don't have time to conduct the interviews. It's their investment. The least that they can do, what we've provided for them, it's the Wamly platform, where they can actually sit in their houses or at their after hours and actually review the videos and provide feedback to the candidates through the video. The HC team as well does that. So it provides convenience, it saves time as well.
Thank you.
I hope it answers your question.
Thank you. If there are any follow-up questions for Pumzile, there'll be an opportunity. As I said, we have one more speaker to go, but before we do that, a massive round of applause to you tonight. Thank you, Pumzile. Phenomenal. Thank you. Andrew, one more speaker to go, then I'm going to close off, so please bear with us, we're almost there. Please join me, Andrew. I'm going to intro Andrew because we go back a while. Andrew is the COO of Command Quality, and they are the dev house that actually built the first version of Wamly. So we go back quite a while, and Andrew then sent me a picture a couple of weeks ago, out of the blue. We actually haven't spoken in many months. We are friends. And he sent me this picture, and the picture depicted how Andrew worked out the money that he's saving Command Quality. And I thought, geez, what a cool story to share. So Andrew, thank you so much. If I missed anything in that intro, please share more about who you are and Command Quality.
Sure, thank you for the opportunity. It's always great to see something in the really infancy stages be a success and all the learnings that have gone into it. So my name is Andrew Mark Lutz, and I am the COO of Command Quality. We're an organization that specializes in software engineering, most specifically when it comes to I've heard the word a lot tonight, automation and manual processes. So we specifically specialize in automation of code and the quality assurance of code, specifically within the banking sector. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's what we did. And looking back at Wamly, Wamzile spoke about graduates. That's always been something close. And we always want to create opportunities. And slap bang in the middle of a very successful graduate program, we were locked down. We really didn't have anywhere for people to go. But as command quality, it's not in our nature to lay people off. And we thought we've got the best talent. They're just halfway, not even halfway, probably closer towards the end of a graduate program. And we put them to good use. So yeah, it's been a really good story.
So Andrew, what was the challenge that was presented?
So traditionally, we get candidates via CV. That's no secret. It gets emailed to us. So the first problem in that situation is that data is going to live in somebody's inbox, and we hope they're going to be around for me like 8 years to come, and we can go back and do a manual search, and hopefully they come back and you can contact them. But the screening of candidates used to take us a long time. We actually used to work on that process for 5 days, and Fridays we used to have interviews, and there would be 2 boardrooms set up, one interviewer there, one interviewer there, and you hope that candidates show up, number one, and number 2, that they fit for the role, technically and culturally, and you get to know a bit more about them. But unfortunately, you can't find that out from a CV. So we really enjoyed the way that we are able to actually send the link out to people and they can openly apply before we even get a CV. We can see what the candidate is about. And there was a question raised earlier, do we have to watch every video? The answer is we do watch every applicant, but we don't watch every question because that is not relevant to my department. My department might be culturally related, whilst yours might be more technical.
Question 7, question 4.
Exactly that. So that isn't a whole hour that you're wasting. You're actually only looking at about 7 or 8 minutes, and you'd quickly know, as one of the other speakers said, if this person is fit or not. So right in the beginning, this is a screening mechanism, and I think sometimes people might not want to do it, but as a tech company, that's already an indication that somebody doesn't want to use tech. So are they already, at this level, the right fit?
And Andrew, the challenge around cost that you and I briefly spoke about, if you can just maybe clarify that and the cost saving and thinking about that from a challenge perspective, because as you said earlier, there's about 70 devs now working there, and you look to go to 300. So I can imagine cost and time playing a factor and a role there.
That's a very valuable question. So I think in any process, if it's not really your process, you don't really understand the costing, or you might turn a blind eye to it. So every step of the process, from when you engage with the HR person or the line manager, that's already a cost, right? So every step of the way is cost sensitive. Never mind what you pay to LinkedIn or to Facebook or to Meta or to whoever. That every step has a cost. So what we basically did is we looked at the number of videos or the applications, for lack of better words, and like I previously said, we actually look at every single application, and even though there's a no, you might be good for future use, but for right now, we need a yes. So we looked at how many yeses we got for a specific role, how many no's we got for a specific role, and we equated the same time value to the yeses and to the no's. The no's were reasonably high, but it could have been a lot higher if we had actually brought that person into the organization for a face-to-face interview further down the process. And it could have been exponentially higher if we made the incorrect hire. That is just not good for an organization at all, and the costs are very, very high.
Andrew, you've touched on some, but I want to specifically go onto 2 points that we actually haven't spoken on too much tonight, and that is training in terms of how to look at questions, how to look at answers, the importance thereof, especially in an organization where you are allocating different raters to different questions. Is somewhere in the chain, if someone gets that wrong or understand or doesn't know what good looks like, it could have a different outcome on the candidate.
Absolutely. I think, I know that HR is traditionally tasked with hiring people, right? I think it's an unfair statement to make because HR is there to assist the organization in getting talent in. They may not have the equipment or skills or tools available to actually identify the correct talent. So when we look at collaboration, it's up to the line manager to give HR the best possible spec so that they know what to look out for just in the beginning of the process. So what Wamly's forced us to do as an organization, and I probably don't speak for our organization only, but it's taken that time out that we actually go and speak to line managers and say, you can't just tell me you need a Java developer. Please sit down with me and specify exactly what you want and need. So that collaboration starts early on in the process and journey. And then we also get tasked with, at times in HR, making bad hires. So now we're sharing the responsibility because you were part of the hiring process. You were also part of the rating process. So collaboratively, we've decided to hire this person. Yes. So I think from that perspective, you're sharing the responsibility and taking accountability as a team, as an organization. It's not just one person's role.
Yes.
As much as it is an HR function, we all have a part to play in the process.
I love that you say that. When in designing Wamly, I wanted to include best practices throughout the journey, even though it's tech. One of them being the candidate can't redo until they are happy and then upload what they want you to see. Another being that all the candidates get the same time to think to answer the same questions. And then the collaboration part, so important. We often know that line managers in traditional interviewing will say, Paul is a no, and we don't know why. You're not giving us, you give us your reasons why not, you give us in the JD what you want, but then when you decline Andrew, you're not always telling me why. And so we're trying to not force, but we're trying to create that collaboration. There is that evidence from all the panel members, a holistic perspective on Andrew, the candidates, and that's what I'm hearing you say.
Very much so. I think, I know earlier in the conversation, we talk about feedback and we talk about why Francois potentially made it or didn't make it. But in many organizations, HR lacks or isn't given enough support in terms of collecting data so that we can use it later.
Yes.
And the cost of that is significant because there was a marketing person involved in getting the spec out to LinkedIn. But more importantly, things live within our mailboxes, and that's not being collaborative or helping the process in any way. No. And looking at candidates' age in the process, or from when they first applied, they may have been junior today, but you still have them. Yeah. So reuse that data in 3 years' time, and they could be a really, really good senior resource. And data is really, really important. And one of the things that was close to us for 2023 was the candidate journey, candidate experience. Those things are very, very, very important. And like one of the other speakers said, they must want to work for you because they could reach out to you on WhatsApp and you responded.
Yes.
Those are the early stages of relationships, and you are the first person that they get to experience. So make it a good one.
Yes, yes. Andrew, key learnings from this journey.
Key learnings from this journey: to all line managers, cooperate with HR and give them the correct detailed specification to make hiring very quick and effective for all of us, because we don't want large numbers of vacancies. And involve your team and test Wamly. Give it to somebody in the organization to test. Involve people. Get a panel going.
Yes.
Make it more collaborative. What this does, it will give the candidate a better experience, but also what it does is candidates join the organization, and we've all been through the same process. One of the speakers spoke about being intimidated. That's a big thing. It really is. And you get to hear about it in strange situations where you find that somebody was really intimidated in the interview process. By hook or crook, they got through.
Yeah.
But that's what we need to eliminate. We need to make it a fair playing field for everyone. And one last thing is we need to educate the candidate on the journey so that they don't lose focus. They have to know every step of the process. So make sure you know it so that your candidate is well informed and they know what's coming.
That circles back to what we spoke with Joe, and yes, we've got phenomenal tech in place in our process, but we must not neglect the human touch. Communicating to them about what the process is, what's coming next, closing the feed, keeping them up to date. I think that's super important.
It is very important, and we've been doing technical assessments for some time. We have to look at this as a human assessment.
Yes.
You know, as well as it's technical, a technical assessment is just as good as a CV, is just as good as everything, but we need to get closer to humans and understanding their parts of what they can bring to the organization. And I think Wamly illustrates that very beautifully from a cultural perspective. You get to know the essence, even though you've seen a technical assessment, you get to know the essence of the person, and that really, really is important.
Amazing. Andrew, thank you so much. Questions for Andrew? Any questions? Okay. There's a question there. I see a hand at the back. There's the mic.
Good evening. It's not really a question per se. It's a comment. I've heard all the speakers talking about employing graduates, and which is good, but unfortunately, I heard no one speaking specifically about employing people with disabilities, especially people with visual impairment, of which I am, and unfortunately, people's perception is that a person with a disability is only in a wheelchair, and as technology develops, it has become easier for us as well as people with visual impairment to be able to compete and to be employable, because technology has developed so much so that software is readily available for us to work, and all we need is to be given an opportunity to do the job. Second point is video interviews. I've done some of the video interviews, and what I found was that the problem with them is that some platforms do not give you a discard option whereby you can discard your video, because if you record your interview using a text-to-speech software, sometimes you find that the lady or the woman who is helping you with the screen reader interjects while you are still talking. So then I'm sure it sounds unprofessional, and so it becomes, they discard it. So yeah, if maybe those software developers can make a video to be able to discard the video and practice before they record, so that they can be able to sound professional. And also, some of the websites that I've encountered are visually impaired, inaccessible. They're too graphical, and they're unable to the speech, because of the graphics, the speech is unable to detect what exactly is happening on the site. Thank you.
Thank you. I know there wasn't a question, but I just quickly want to respond. I think there is a responsibility on all service providers, including Wamly, to constantly be aware of, is the tech inclusive everywhere, including disability? There's a massive responsibility, and I'll be the first to say that we can definitely do some work around that you just said. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. All right, Andrew, thank you so much. Andrew is the beautiful tall guy with the white shirt, if you want to grab him for more questions. Thanks, Andrew. We are almost done, I promise. I've got 3 more slides that I'm going to share with you. Before I get to that, to my panel, I've lost one individual. I hope you didn't scare Anton away. Thank you Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing with the audience. Thank you for answering your questions. Please feel free to ask more questions to the panel members when we do break in a couple of minutes for just overall networking. I'm not going to share the timeline with you again. I do, however, want to leave you this evening with elements in the Wamly verse that excites us, where we're at, where we want to go next year. So Wamly Attract, we have started with creating talent pools. You don't have to scan this QR code, by the way. I'll talk you through the journey. I have spoken about this previously as a concept, as a dream, as something that we wanted to start looking at. And I'm so excited to announce that in the last couple of months, we've embarked on a couple of projects with clients willing to partner with us to do this. So basically, what is this? This is us trying to create a flow where we bring in candidates in a talent pool, in a specific job family that you can access immediately and shop from. Why? Because attracting talents, finding top talent, as the panel alluded to in all their talks, is increasingly difficult. So what we played here with is wherever you advertise, there is a QR code that takes the candidate to a landing page. This landing page is an EVP, and this is an example of an actual job at Wamly, our senior front-end developer, where we share more about the job. There's a video of myself and Johan talking about the front-end dev role, and then if you were to scroll down, which you can't on the screen right now, on that landing page, there is our EVP, what the job offers, the type of candidate that we're looking for. And the idea really is to bring candidates, irrespective where we find them, all to the single place where we can share our EVP and our brand. But what's really exciting then is then the moment you apply, we then connect with and integrate with WhatsApp that starts communicating with the candidates. Okay, so we're experimenting moving away from email, especially on the lower levels. We know people don't always have email. WhatsApp is the most used app, at least from a communication perspective. I'm sure some people will argue other providers, but I mean, we all use WhatsApp. And then through WhatsApp, start communicating with the candidate in terms of getting them into starting my Wamly interview, remind me later, and some tips and tricks. And then this automation and this flow has got a human at Wamly at the back end communicating with the candidates, asking them when are they going to do it, why do they not want to do it, or whatever information the candidate asks us back. And then through this, teaching the bot as well how to respond going forward, and then ultimately getting the candidate into Wamly. So this is something we're very excited about to launch, so keep an eye out on the communication around Wamly Attract. We are going to be focusing on the customer-facing roles first. The idea here is not to be recruiters. Let me say that while being on stage. The idea here is to build a talent pool that you can access, but doing it in a fun way at scale without losing. Together with us, we are very excited, and Janelle, you called in Niels, am I correct? Okay. We are very excited about our AI integration. So here are some screens. Next year, we are integrating with ChatGPT to help you, the HR administrator in your Wamly portal, set up questions and skills tests with an integration to ChatGPT and AI or OpenAI. So again, just helping, and we often get this. We have shown Bianca, her name has been used. She, I think, is sitting now with clients. She often gets phoned, asked, listen, do you have an interview guide for me for a sales manager? What skills test must I build for a front-end dev? And we want to continue to build out functionality in the system through tech to enable you to help build questions and skills tests. And we will test that, get feedback, and continue to build out the AI. We are definitely not yet at a point where the AI is going to assess all the candidates and tell you who to hire. I often get asked that. Like, when is Wamly bringing out AI? And then I go, okay, cool, it's like the integration question, but what do you mean? What about AI? And then, we aren't always sure what that is. For us, we want to carefully work with artificial intelligence, specifically in South Africa, with our beautiful, diverse landscape, and not just jump to the tech telling us who to appoint. So we will work with that, gather your feedback, but we're very excited about this. And then there's just another screen around generate the question. So this is our UI coming. You'll see this in your Wamly platform soon. And then the last 4 elements, we are considering looking at building Kanban views in Wamly just to track the different stages that your candidates are in the journey, as well as document uploads for candidates. We are particularly excited around some integrations that we're doing next year with ATS systems, partnering with psychometric assessment providers, background checks, and WhatsApps. So that's on the roadmap. That's what we're considering looking at. Very excited because we're going to continue to help you hire better people faster. I have one more slide left, and that is that if you want to book a coffee with us, we've never had a call to action. Here is one. If what you've seen excites you, scan that. If not, find anybody with a Wamly shirt or talk to anybody that you see here tonight. From the bottom of my heart, it is 8:30 exactly. I want to thank you for being here. If you're a regular, I want to thank you for returning. If you're a friend, a family member supporting, thank you. If you're a client, thank you so much. If you're just an HR professional wanting to be curious on the 5th of December, well done. I hope this evening gave you value. I hope that you can see our heart behind this, and that this event, again, is an attempt for us to bring you value, showcase you value. Speakers, thank you again so much for your time. Please don't rush off. Just go and meet. Mark always says this. Mark, how do you end off these shows? Okay. Don't be a networking. Go and meet someone you've never met before. Thank you for being here. Drive safe and have a Merry, Merry Christmas from all of us at Wamly.